Cricut stock just IPO'd. So CRCT stock IPO'd earlier this week. Now, this is my hot take on Cricut stock, and they are enabling the creator economy. Now, when you look at, for example, e-commerce, slightly different, you generally think of like the dominant empire versus the rebels, like Amazon being the empire and Shopify arming the rebels. That's even a phrase I think they've used. And Cricut, if you were to use the same thing, same sort of analogy to the creator economy, I think you would think of Cricut as sort of arming the rebels, arming millions of small entrepreneurs, small creators looking to do their own thing, looking to build something, looking to, weave away at something or cut something or make something special that means something customized that means something to their loved ones or a small network of people. So, or just creative products that sort of have their own signature. And so this is Cricut, I would say, is the tool that's enabling millions of small entrepreneurs. They sell a very affordable, low-margin, internet-enabled tools and then make profits on the subscription and sort of the materials that go along with it. So it's the classic razor blade model where you sell the razor at a low premium, a low markup, and then make up most of your profits on the consistent razor blades each month. In this case, it's the accessories that go with it, the materials that go with it. Oh, these are cutting machines. Oh, you need to replace the blades. Oh, you're going to be putting certain types of vinyl through these machines as you do your cutting. That's, hey, why don't you order the Cricut branded materials? Also a very high margin subscription. So we'll get into those aspects in a minute. And meanwhile, their growth, if you looked at their trajectory over the last few years and then look at 2020, it's just incredible what they've been able to do, particularly as they really tapped into a lot of people just sort of being stuck at home in 2020. And they posted, effectively doubled their top line in 2020, and they quadrupled, so 4x'd their profit, nearly 4x their profit in 2020. So they've done an incredible job. And this is, look, there's a lot of sort of questionable SPACs out there that's like, hey, there's a lot of future potential growth opportunity and maybe we'll have margins. This is a company with real growth and real profits, posting, once again, double top line growth and 4x bottom line growth. So that is something that should catch your attention. This video is my hot take, as they have just gone public yesterday. So, the amount of information is somewhat limited. I don't have as many transcripts or conference calls to go over. I'm still reflecting on their valuation, but overall, I'm very impressed with what they've been able to accomplish. Their valuation seems fair, but there is a lot of uncertainty about what's the business look like in the years ahead. What do they look like later on this year? How much demand was pulled forward because of COVID? So I'm going to discuss a lot of these different things. I'm going to primarily go over their business model, save the valuation for the end of the video like I usually do. And this video goes out to all my Unrivaled Investing Journey subscribers. About that, let's do a quick plug so you know what you're watching. My name is Daniel. You're watching Unrivaled Investing. This is a no-hype, mission-focused channel to try to find you exceptional companies and unrivaled investments. If you enjoy learning about potential multi-baggers, types of companies that can potentially go up hundreds of thousands %, please make a point of subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, that thumbs up, smash it right now. It really does help. And if you want to follow my personal journey, go to unrivaledinvesting.com, click on Journey. So what is Cricut? What do they do? It's enabling creators. Someone that, if you want to make these really customized cards, tell someone, hey, I love you, or I'm sorry, or happy birthday. It's really special when you're like, wow, this is really intricate. This, like, if I were to go to the grocery store, this would cost like $10, but I wouldn't even be able to get something like this. This is incredible. And then, like, cool birthday, like a lot of moms looking to throw awesome parties for their kids. Make your own decorations, make your own signs that look cool. Enabling creators with vinyl labels for the kitchen, paper crafts. Here it is. Once again, it's 96% of their users are females, so you're going to think a lot of moms, a lot of wives. And so, here it is, the moms. Hey, maybe they want to build something cool for their son's room. Oh, his son's into dinosaurs. Let's do this paper craft dinosaur and print it and cut it out via using the Cricut machines. Or you wanted to have some basswood decor where you're cutting it out and coloring it. And you could do all sorts of things: leather goods, customized apparel, and that's with their Easy Press, where you design it and then you put it on the apparel yourself. So think about like all these micro printings. Like one could consider a company like Vistaprint as closer to the empire. They're not really, just because they don't own a huge percentage of the business for small batch printing. But this is sort of like enabling people to do it yourself. So if you're the coach of a soccer team and you have a bunch of jerseys that you want printed out for the little league or whatever, you could quickly do a batch of 5 or 10 with the technology that they have, their Easy Press, or printable stickers because you want to make your phone look even more awesome, or your infusible inked mug, so that way you can put it in the dishwasher, the ink doesn't come out. So lots of interesting products. Cutting through leather, that's pretty neat. Cutting it, refining it, making custom jewelry. So how can you make all this stuff? And it's a bunch of low-cost internet-connected devices. So here's an example of the Cricut Joy, which was one of their lower-end products, costing like $100. Their app is also, they have this Cricut Design Space app. It's highly rated, number 6 in the graphics and design category in the Apple App Store. 4.8 stars, so highly reviewed. And generally, these apps need to directly integrate with this internet connected technology. So you can say, hey, here on my phone or here on my computer, this is what I want the design to look like. And then boom, you can have it either print or cut out or write, however you want to frame it, shortly thereafter. You want to make these little custom labels that you're going to attach to your bottle. Oh, here's some bay leaves. Let's do that right here. And you can do that with your Cricut Joy. Make a little happiness in minutes. And a lot of people like the appeal of customizing. This is your life. You want to be able to put your own little flavor on it, your own spin on things. And so how can you make all this? Once again, here's another example of their products. Here's the Easy Press, the Cricut Easy Press. They also have the Cricut Easy Press Mini. And a lot of people are like, well, wait a second. If you're pressing it yourself, which I used to think of like using an iron to do that, but now you can use their technology, which is faster and easier. Like, isn't there a risk that it'll get washed off, when you put it in, because once again, the Little League jersey is going to get all dirty, and then you're going to want to wash it because you can't wear the same shirt over and over again. At least if you're a civilized human being, at least that's what I'm told. And so like what they do is, this is why, they have this, we have now in our strong bond guarantee, one of our many iron-on materials. This means that when the Cricut iron-on, so that's very, like, they're creating their own branded accessories and materials. When the Cricut iron-on is used as directed, you'll be completely satisfied with the results. If not, we'll replace it for free. So they're saying, look, and they talk about how this thing could potentially last for years when you use it. And here it is, they're using a shirt, and they show like the number of marks, the number of times that it's been washed, and how it still looks good. Here are all these little logos that they had infused into the shirt, and look, it's been washed all these times and it still looks great. So just another example of the markets that they're trying to tap into. Then there's sort of higher end products like the Cricut Maker. Now you're talking about a couple $100, and now you're cutting into things that are a little harder to cut into. You start off with this Cricut Joy. You're generally looking at like vinyl or thin paper, whereas if you're looking at the Cricut Maker and their higher end products, the ones that cost a couple $100, now you have additional functionality, and it talks about handles fabrics, leather, paper, balsa wood with effortless precision, cuts sewing patterns is just a few clicks, and places more creative possibilities than ever at your fingertips. The ultimate smart cutting machine. So this is about taking these materials and easily being able to cut them and layer them if you wanted to create something out of them. And, as you look at this business model, I've been talking about sort of their products and what you're able to do with them, but what's their actual business model? What's that look like? And 43% of their 2020 revenue was hardware, and you can see that trend has been fairly consistent over the last few years, where hardware is a good chunk. They're connected machines, aka hardware is a good chunk of their revenue, but it only represents less than 20% of their gross profit. So then you're supposed to say, well, wait a second. So the economics of this business are really, if less than 20% of your gross profits are driven by the machines, then that means the vast majority of your economics are driven by something else. In this case, it's driven by subscriptions and accessories and materials. And so you can see accessories and materials were 50% of gross profit when you subtract the 430 minus 260 relative to this 330 million in gross profit, and about 40% gross margin. And their subscriptions were about 30% of their gross profit and have an 88% gross margin, which is beautiful. So you look at this sort of business and you go, wow, this is the classic razor blade model. You sell your razor blades at a lower markup, let's say 10-15%. You're selling your hardware at, let's say, 10-15% 50% markup. You're not looking to make a lot of profit because you want to get your foot in the door, so that way your customers go, wow, this is incredible what is enabled for a low price. Oh, all of a sudden I can cut these leather goods. I want to make some cool leather earrings. Cool. I want to make some cool paper craft, the dinosaur paper craft. Cool. You can now do this for a low, cost of admission. But then, you know what? You want to make sure you get the right materials that work with your cutter. You want to make sure you get the right materials that work with your Cricut products. If you're going to be infusing, a logo into a T-shirt, and you want to make sure it doesn't get washed off the third time. You want to make sure you use the Cricut products, the Cricut branded products that the infusible ink that Cricut recommends. And so you look at these different things and you can start understanding, oh, now I understand why the accessories and materials are half of their profits and subscriptions are another third of their profits. And that's where the vast majority of their gross profits come from. And so if you understand, let's dig a little bit deeper into the materials and accessories, for example. So you see over half of it is project materials. So as you want to work on a new project, 54%, ranging from $3.99 to $69.99. So it can be very affordable. Then easy press stuff like we've already talked about, machine supplies. These cutters do wear out over time, so you do need to replace them. The accessories, digital content. Oh, you want this very particular cutout. Oh, you're doing a Frozen 2 themed birthday party and you want to get Olaf. You know what? It's a good thing Cricut's working with Disney, and now you can get that cut out and you can use Olaf for that birthday party, or Sven, or whoever. And so, you look at the materials and accessories and you see vinyl, iron-ons, papers, smart materials for Cricut Joy, materials for the Cricut Maker, infusible inks. So these are an example of this project materials that are the vast majority of their materials and accessories. You could see for their easy press items, it's these infusible ink transfer sheets. Create unbelievable products with pre-ink sheets available in an array of solid colors, infusible ink markers, so that way you can draw on an artwork and make sure it actually sticks. Or you can look at the blanks if you want to get a new t-shirt or bag, coaster, cup. So that way, hey, this is the material we use, these are the markers we use. If you use our stuff, you know that it will work well. If you use something else, well, that's sort of questionable whether or not it'll work as well. And, also the blades, the machine accessories, knife blades for cutting these things out. And that's a little bit more expensive, you can see. And so, what does the subscription, so that covers the 50% of their gross profits. How about the subscription offering? What exactly is that? So what you're really accessing, I mentioned sort of getting that Olaf cutout. Well, what if you have a whole library of content and now they're like, look, you want this font to be able to print for your vinyl that you're going to be putting on some kitchen, bins, or hey, here's my spice jar and I want everything labeled correctly. And you want to use a particular font. 500 fonts, 100,000 images that you can be using from their library. You getting exclusive discounts using their subscription. Discount on licensed content, Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, Harry Potter. Free shipping on orders over $50. You get effectively customer support. So like, hey, if you're having a problem with your machine, you can access customer support without a problem. So, and this is all for a low price of $9.99 a month. So it seems, for someone that's, really enjoys learning about crafting or doing this for themselves, that's a very reasonable entry point to make sure you're getting access to this library of content and getting this full experience. And $9.99 is generally a very affordable price. You have 1.3 million paid subscribers versus their 4.3 million user base. 1.3 million paid subscribers, that's a lot of folks that are crafting in the world, but they do call out that at the end of the day, this is still only a teeny tiny fraction of what they think is the total addressable market, or there's even their serviceable addressable market, where they think they're in the single digits percentages penetration in terms of who's crafting and who's using their services, suggesting multiples upside over time if they can actually deliver. And so, how do people actually find out about Cricut? And this is where it's interesting and potentially a competitive advantage for them, where about 40% plus comes from friends and family, effectively doing this themselves and saying, hey, I had such a good time doing this, I want to bring someone involved. And you read a lot of these stories, or at least I have, where you see, hey, you read a daughter's doing this and she likes, this is a way of bringing in her retired mom and then working together, or some school teachers, and now they do these projects together. And so this creates a friends and family, a sort of community aspect where 40% of the folks that use it ultimately are referred. It's sort of like, they're like, hey, this was such a fun experience. Let's, let me bring in someone that I love and we can do this together. It's a bonding activity. 20% from low cost or free marketing channels like Pinterest. And here you can see one of the Pinterest boards, over 50 easy Cricut projects for beginners. And if you go to Pinterest or you go to Etsy, you're going to see that there's a lot of Cricut related themes, like how to make money from Cricut, or here's some projects. Now that you brought this machine, what are 5 to 10 things you can quickly do? And so the vast majority of their customers, over 60%, are effectively free acquisition. So that does give you a leg up. If you're, let's say, a competitor that says, well, wait a second, they're just selling these machines, these cutting machines and these designs, like I can easily get into that. Well, wait a second, do you have the library of content? Do you have the subscription that goes with it? Do you have this community of people that sort of associated with using these products? Oh, do your products actually work? Do you have all these accessories that we know for sure are going to work with your products? So, you do have these sort of secondary elements that become critical. So it's not just about selling hardware, and could suggest that they do have a competitive advantage when it comes to competing with others in the hardware space. What are my thoughts on the valuation? Before actually digging into their valuation, I'm actually quite impressed by their financials. I've already talked about how their revenue growth has accelerated pretty dramatically, and you can see what their profits have been over the last few years. I'll shrink myself a little bit so you can see a little better. But this is 2018, 2019, and 2020, and this is their operating profits for those 3 years. And as you look at this, I mean, this is 10% plus operating profits, and that's the figure I'm always thinking about with optimized margins. And you're looking at income from operations of nearly 20% profit margin. Now this did accelerate quite a bit in 2020, a dramatic improvement in their profits, and we'll talk about why that could have happened at the end of this video. But once again, why I'm impressed with this is, like, net income profitable since 2017. So they're growing and they're profitable, and they've been growing at a hyper clip, minimum 30% plus each year. EBITDA profitable since 2014, and operating margins ranging from 10 to 20%. So it is pretty interesting. How do I think about their valuation as I look at this? And so right now the stock, this is Friday was its second day trading. It's around $18 a share, or a little under $4 billion valuation, but based on its pro forma shares outstanding. And you can see, they grew, nearly doubled their top line, in 2020. So then the big question is, how much was demand pulled forward in 2020, and what sort of impact do you have for 2021? You had a lot of people with COVID sort of saying, like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck at home. What can I do? So people are like, hey, I'll do crafting. So you do have this risk of, like, hey, what's the risk that this actually turns down a bit in 2021? So that's the reason why I'm putting a negative 10%, then positive 10%, then 20% growth. So this is actually a lower range of growth than you've seen historically, but part of that is just because 2020 was such a banner year for them. And honestly, when I think about this, a lot of investing is drawing conclusions from data points that you've gotten elsewhere. And this is why, anyone that says, hey, here's the go-to for investing, it's not quite so simple. You actually have to use sort of a lattice work of data points, of models, when you're considering different companies. So for example, I looked at Roblox. I've done a video on them, and they had a banner year in 2020 as well, because a lot of kids were stuck at home, and a lot of parents were stuck at home with their kids, and were like, hey, here's my wallet, please don't bother me for the next few hours. And the kids were like, great, huzzah, I'm gonna go buy some games and buy some Roblox, and have a great time, getting on. My avatar is gonna be driving a Ferrari in this game, like that sort of mentality. And so Roblox had this fantastic year, and everything did really well. But when they're looking at their forward guidance for the year, they're effectively looking at like a slightly negative to a slightly positive figure. And so that's part of like the data point that I'm reflecting on as I'm thinking about what you have here with Cricut, where I'm like, maybe it's down 10%, maybe it's up 10%, maybe it's positive 20. So there's a lot of questions here in terms of what does the year ahead look like in terms of optimized margins. Given that 2020 was a really strong year and they had 20% profit margins, I'm putting 20% on the high side, putting 15 to 20% as a range for the future. Now, am I being too conservative here? It's possible, especially when they already put up 20% margins. But I'll talk about this in just 1 second, where what's the risk that this was actually overheated or a little bit too high? Once again, talk about that in a second. So then what's the growth rate in the ensuing years? I'm putting a range of 10, 15, 25%. Once again, you can choose. This part of my value proposition to you is you can click File, Download, and change anything in yellow as you see fit, based on these different assumptions. So if you think 20% growth is more reasonable long term, absolutely can update that. And so then based on that, that growth rate and that range of assumed multiples in the future, you can see what the risk reward sort of implies, where you're nearly 200% upside on the high case, and then the downside, it's more like you lose half your money over the next 5 years, which would obviously be a suboptimal return. So it's an interesting, not breathtaking or just completely salivating risk reward, but you do have to ask yourself, am I being too conservative on the growth rate for the ensuing 4 years? Is it possible that it actually, picks up dramatically just because they were growing, at a faster clip? Is this too discounted given that they're at 20% already? So it's an interesting risk reward, not crazy in my opinion. There is a bit of a cash accrual that one does need to call out that you should think about will be benefiting the prospective investors, because it is a cash flowing business model right now. And the reality is, right now you're not getting it at a crazy valuation. This is a company that you're effectively getting for a mid-20s earnings multiple, which is kind of interesting, a mid-20s earnings multiple for a company that grew pretty quickly. So it's interesting. This is a logical framework, that I'm looking at. Could this go dramatically higher? It could go higher or lower, and that's why I like working from a logical framework. Could it go way higher, way lower? Of course. You get wild rides in the market, but I want to have a framework from which I'm sort of underwriting a thesis. And so, as I'm revisiting, as I'm thinking about this, do I pull the trigger on it, that sort of question, there are a number of big questions that sort of stand out. Like 2020, was this unexpectedly strong year for them because of COVID, as growth rate accelerated from 40% year over year to 100% year over year. So they clearly had this huge benefit in growth. How much of this is pulling forward demand where 2021, 2022, 2023 is going to see slower growth? So it's a realistic question in my mind. Their margins also nearly doubled from what was 10% to 20% plus in 2020. So they're and you go, wow, that's great. Doesn't that suggest that their business model at scale can deliver these types of fantastic results? But it also should be tempered because their products were in such high demand that they had inventory shortages in part of 2020, where the CEO even sort of put out a note saying, hey, sorry if things take a little bit longer to get to you. We're having shortages. We have one main supplier, manufacturer of our cutters, of our machines. And so that, when you understand you're in that sort of dynamic, when there's shortages, it's not like you're in an environment where you have to consider discounts, and discounts eat directly into your margins. And so that, it does make me wonder, is 20% sustainable for the years ahead, or is it more appropriate to be modeling out 15, 17.5%, 20? Or maybe I'm being too aggressive. Maybe it's really 10% long term. The next key component is 50% of their gross profit is from accessories and materials. So what's the risk that you have folks sort of saying, hey, it's nice to own the Cricut machine, but you know what? I want to go with this other, these other papers, these other vinyls that I can get for maybe at a cheaper price. And that is a risk that they call out in the prospectus, that you could potentially get their materials and accessories for lower prices elsewhere. So what's the risk that sort of gets commoditized, much like the printing industry has over time? If you look at Xerox at one point was a go-go stock. It was very popular at one point. It's like, hey, you got this printer and you got this copy machine, and then you sell the accessories and you get it was a great business model. But over time, people encroached. It effectively became commoditized. And so that's a core question here, is what's the risk that this gets commoditized in the future? All of these core questions, I think, are critical if you want to think about, if you want to even consider owning Cricut in the future. And I'm actually going to discuss a lot of these questions and more in an exclusive video that I'm going to follow up with for my Unrivaled Investing Journey subscribers. I'm going to post a link in the commentary of this video below discussing these sort of critical follow-up questions, like, hey, what's sort of the risk that you have this decline? What are sort of the trade-offs that it gets commoditized? What are the different aspects to consider? So that'll be an exclusive video for Unrivaled Investing Journey subscribers. And that's just one of the benefits that the Unrivaled Investing Journey subscribers get, where I have a bunch of other exclusive content like my portfolio updates. You can see what I'm buying, what am I selling, what am I holding. Once a month I have my full portfolio, but then throughout the month I sort of give updates on for anything that's material. I also have an educational series, talking about, for example, how to value a company, or how do I think about hedging, or stock market commentary. So you get my portfolio, educational material, and I also aim to identify potential multi-baggers. Because in my heart of hearts, I do believe that finding potential multi-baggers, finding one potential multi-bagger, can change your potential life journey. So if you're interested in following my journey as I try to find these potential multi-baggers, go to unrivaledinvesting.com, click on Journey. If you enjoyed watching this video and learning about Cricut, CRCT stock, a new IPO, the Cricut IPO, if you enjoyed watching it, if you enjoyed learning about Cricut, a potential multi-bagger, please make a point of subscribing. And if you enjoyed it, also hit that like button. It does help the Google algorithm. Thanks so much.